Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination, but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. This episode of Amateur Traveler is sponsored by Roam Right, a leading provider of travel insurance. What if you booked and paid for your vacation and then couldn't travel? With the right travel insurance plan, you could get your money back. Roam Right covers canceled trips, lost luggage, even medical emergencies. Visit roamright.com. That's ROAMRIGHT.com for more information.
I got my bags packed, I'm on a roll. I'm heading out there and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo. 15
Amateur Traveler, episode 493. Today, the Amateur Traveler talks about quaint fishing villages and smoldering volcanoes as we travel in the footsteps of Odysseus and go to the Aeolian Islands off Sicily.
heading home, but maybe not today.
Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. We're getting close to our 500th episode, only 7 more to go, but today, let's talk about the Aeolian Islands. I'd like to welcome to the show Rick Zullo of rickzullo.com, travel blogger about Italy, who's come to talk to us about a lesser-known destination of Italy. Rick, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's an honor to be here with you today. I love your show. I'm a fan, and it's an honor to be a guest today.
Well, thanks. And I say a lesser-known destination in Italy. I had to look this up. So where are we talking about today?
Okay, yeah, these are called the Aeolian Islands, and they're a little volcanic archipelago off the coast of Sicily. So if you are looking at Sicily, it's on the north side in the Tyrrhenian Sea, and there's 7 little islands. There's actually 8, but 7 that are inhabited, and it's a wonderful destination for people who are a little more adventurous.
Okay. Yeah, let's start with that. Why would someone go? Because we're going to talk about getting there, and it's not a place you're just going to stumble across. It's going to take some effort to get there. So why are we going to take that effort and go to these islands?
Well, the thing about it is they're really well preserved. In fact, they're a UNESCO heritage site, and there's all kinds of restrictions on development there. So they are pretty much as they've been for the last couple hundred years. In fact, one of the islands only had electricity as late as the 1990s. So they're still very well preserved, little fishing villages, and lots to see as far as archaeology, natural beauty. So if you like hiking and things on the water, so scuba diving, boating, that kind of thing, and history and wonderful, wonderful seafood. So this is a place where you go to see the Italy of years past.
Excellent. And we talked about getting there. You mentioned that getting there takes a little work.
Maybe more than a little. So this could be a barrier, and this is why you really won't find, almost no American tourists there. There are, Italians who go there because this is a wonderful location for them, easy to get to if you already live in Italy. But yeah, the challenge for people from the U.S. is first you have to get to Italy. So generally a flight in the Milan or Rome, and then another flight from Milan or Rome to the city of Catania on the main island of Sicily. And then from there you have to hit ground transportation, usually in the form of a private coach, like a bus that would take you to the port town of either Messina or Milazzo being the more popular. And from there you take a hydrofoil, so a fast boat, hopefully. That takes about an hour to get to the islands from there. So there you have it. You have to rely on air, sea, and land transportation to get there. It's not like it's a hop, skip, and a jump.
Excellent. So we're out of Messina or
Milazzo is the other one.
Milazzo. I am looking at it on the map, but I'm just trying to figure out how to pronounce the double Z's there. So just off the northern coast of Sicily.
The northern coast of Sicily. This is the provincia of Messina. So Messina is, I guess you'd call it the state capital of this area. And these little islands are just about an hour off the main coast.
Excellent. So what kind of itinerary do you recommend for when we go up to the Aeolian Islands?
So I would suggest picking one location as your base, and Lipari might be the best choice. It's the largest of the islands, and it has the most diverse activities as well as the best port connection. So from Lipari, you can easily reach the other islands by these small little ferry boats that go back and forth all day. Lipari is the biggest, and it has about 10,000 inhabitants, so it's not tiny. I mean, it's decent size, and that's broken up into, I think, about 4 or 5 main towns, the biggest being the town of Lipari itself. So I can go on from there and talk about the itinerary a little bit.
Sure.
This is the island, Lipari, that's the biggest and probably has the most tangible sense of history. It was a Greek settlement originally, and in fact, you can still see the remains of a Greek acropolis there on the island. In fact, they have a main castle there that's just above the port, and this castle, fortified little city inside the main town of Lipari, has the Greek acropolis, but also a Norman cathedral, a wall built by the Spanish. So you sort of see the whole timeline of this Mediterranean area in this this one very small location. It's fascinating.
Well, I was noticing that as I was looking up some of the history of the place that we've got Greeks, we've got Carthaginians, we've got Romans, we've got Normans, we've got Turks, and then you threw in Spanish, which I hadn't even noticed.
Yeah, the Spanish were much later, like 15th, 16th century. They were there in the all of Sicily, in fact. And so you do feel a little bit of their influence there. I really think it's the Greek that you feel the most. I mean, maybe I just want to feel it the most, but even some of the houses there on some of the islands, they have the whitewashed houses with the blue trim, kind of reminiscent of the Greek islands, that we know today of Santorini or Mykonos or those islands. So it does look a little bit like that. The name of the islands in general, they are named after the Greek god Aeolus, who is the god of the wind, and it is windy there.
Okay. That is why it sounded familiar. I was trying to place that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. In fact, these islands were also setting for much of Homer's Odyssey. So if you know the story of Odysseus, he was trying to get back to go after the Trojan War, and he was stuck on these islands for, I think it was years. And, the gods kept pushing him back with storms and sea monsters and everything else. And so he was on these islands for a long time.
So you did say traveling to these islands could be complicated.
Yeah, you have to watch out. You pass through the Straits of Messina, and you have to watch out for the two sea monsters, the Scylla and Charybdis. Scylla was a six-headed sea monster that wanted to eat 6 of his crew members, and Charybdis was a whirlpool that eventually sucked his boat down into the sea. So it's not easy. Be careful when you go in there.
Excellent. So we started on Lipari. We mentioned a little bit of what's on Lipari, but what would you do sort of day to day? What would you tackle the first day?
Well, yeah, the first day I would relax and see this area that I was just talking about around the castle. So the castle includes an archaeological museum. There is the remains of the Greek acropolis. You can visit the Norman cathedral, and the wonderful views from up there too. You can look down on the port, the marina area, and take some wonderful pictures. Your first day, I would do that. I would just get the lay of the land, visit the castle and the cathedral and the museum, and then go have a nice lunch.
Got a recommendation for lunch?
I do. The place that I went to about a month ago was called Filippino, Filippino, and it's a great location right there by the castle, and a beautiful outdoor setting with bougainvillea kind of hanging down over the umbrellas and everything, and wonderful seafood. So go there and have a big fresh whole fish. That would be the thing to eat there.
Okay.
Yeah. So, if you wanted to stay on Lipari, which I do recommend, I think you should go for at least a week, because if you're going to take all the trouble to get there, you need to spend a week there.
Mm-hmm.
Look into the possibility of renting what they call casa vacanze, so vacation houses. So it's a small little house or apartment that you could stay there and actually have a little kitchen and a little sitting area. And they're really cheap. I mean, if you go in the off season, now don't go in August.
I was going to say you were there a month ago, so that's off season.
That's off season, but the weather was wonderful. I mean, It was perfect for doing anything you wanted to do outside. Now, the water was a little cold by then, but I'll mention later on Volcano, they have some wonderful thermal baths, and even in the sea itself, they'll have thermal areas where the hot water is bubbling out of the sand underneath the sea right off the beach. So I would get one of these little casa vacanze and just stay there for a week. I mean, for like $300 to $350 a week, you can have your own little place with a balcony overlooking the sea and everything. And you pay $5 extra a day for air conditioning if you want it. But honestly, if you go in the off season, you don't need it. So, that includes everything. $350 a day would get you a little one-bedroom apartment overlooking the sea, and you could stay there very comfortably and not have to eat all your meals out. You could at least have a meal or two at your place if you wanted to save a little money. Although, to be honest, again, the restaurants are fairly inexpensive too, so there's no reason not to eat out. Then from Lipari, you can take a very short boat ride to the island of Vulcano. And as the name suggests, there is a smoldering volcano on the island. It's not the one that people typically go to see. It's not the one that erupts in any kind of spectacular fashion, but it is there, and it gives rise to some of these other phenomenon. For example, there are some warm mud baths that have this volcanic soil, this volcanic mud, and the thermals come up from the ground and make the mud very warm. And supposedly it has a curative properties for the skin.
And did you try the mud baths when you were there?
I didn't. I got close, but the rotten egg stink was enough to keep me away. In fact, somebody said unless you have an extra bathing suit that you're willing to discard, you're better off not going in because it will not come out of your clothing. So I opted not to. But nearby there's actually a beach. And if you step just off of the sand into the water, just about 10 or 15 feet offshore, you can see where there's bubbles, coming out of the ground in the beach
Sure.
as well, in the ocean water. So the ocean water is also warmed by the thermals of the volcano. So it's very pleasant. There's a nice little beach club there. For €5, you can plop down on a beach chair with an umbrella and someone will come up and offer you a drink. And it's a very relaxing way to spend a day.
Excellent. How long is that ferry ride?
Yeah, the ferry ride from Lipari to Volcano is only about, 15 minutes maybe
Oh, wow. Okay.
at the
Really
most.
close.
Yeah, it's the closest island. Those two are pretty close together. Remember, it took us about an hour to get from the main island of Sicily to Lipari. But then when you start jumping around within the Aeolian Islands, the trips are fairly short, 15 to 30 minutes max, I would say. So on Volcano, there's also plenty of hiking to be done. You can go up to the top of this volcano as well and get some great panoramic views. But this is a sort of undeveloped island. I mean, or at least it's not as developed as, say, Lipari. I mean, it's a little rougher. It's going to be a little cheaper if you want to stay there. And you're not going to have quite as many amenities in the way of restaurants and shopping and whatnot. But it's very pleasant, beautiful outdoor environments to walk around. And of course, there's the ocean for swimming and water sports.
Let's take a break and hear from our sponsor, who is Rome Right. When planning your trip, you probably don't want to think about any bad thing that can happen, but the truth is, stuff happens all the time. Your flight might get canceled, your luggage may get lost, you might even get sick or injured because accidents happen even when you are away from home. What if you couldn't even go on your trip? Or what if you need medical care in a foreign country? How would you communicate with doctors or fly home? Your primary medical insurance may not cover these expenses, but travel insurance can help. One Roam Right customer racked up close to $117,000 in medical bills and an air ambulance ride from Europe to the United States. His Roam Right travel insurance policy? Just $28. When booking your next trip, you'll want to get your travel insurance as soon as you make your plans. You could get early bird benefits like a pre-existing medical condition waiver and the option to upgrade to cancel for any reason coverage. To protect your next trip with travel insurance, visit roamright.com. That's ROAMRIGHT.com. And thanks to Roam Right for sponsoring Amateur Traveler.
These islands are all very well connected by ferry. So the other one to see is Salina.
Okay.
Salina is famous for, well, it was made famous by the movie Il Postino, if anyone has seen that. It's a famous movie, let's see, probably the 60s, 70s even. So this was a movie actually made by a British production company. So it's not technically considered an Italian film, although it was done in Italian language with English subtitles. This is a very famous movie, and people go there to see this. This is on Salina. So mostly this island was famous in the past for being the area where they produced the sweet wine called Malvasia. It was very popular among the British especially. And they made a lot of money on this island exporting this sweet wine until the phylloxera plague destroyed much of the crop. That prompted a lot of the residents to actually emigrate to Australia. And in fact, they were the ones who started that country's wine industry.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So yeah, it was bad. I mean, they had to actually bring back some rootstocks from the New World, from California, and
Right,
graft
sure.
them onto the old vines, and so that way they were able to make this resistant vines of grapes, which now grow. So, but it's a nice place to visit as well. Okay, and this island, Selena, we're talking about, is also has sort of that Greek island feel to it. It's got the whitewashed houses and the with the blue trim, and sort of very laid back, very comfortable, and that sort of thing. So now, if you want to go the other end of the spectrum, you can go to Panarea. And this is sort of where the jet set hang out. All the famous, rich and famous Italian celebrities and soccer players would go to Panarea in August, spend an entire month there. In fact, all these islands, I think August is the month to avoid because that's high season and prices triple, and it's more crowded. July can be that way too a little bit. So really my suggestion is any of these places, any months other than July or August would be great. Now, the winter months, they're fine to visit, but you're not going to be able to do the water sports and stuff like that. But in Panarea, the hotels are going to be much more expensive, much more luxurious. And if that's the kind of vacation that you want, you can certainly find some, five-star accommodations on the beach and rub elbows with the rich and famous. But near to Panarea, there is another island. It's one of the uninhabited ones. I mentioned there are seven. There's actually eight, and I hope I'll pronounce this right. Basiluzzo. Basiluzzo is just a big rock in the ocean, and you can go there and you can kind of climb around on it and stuff, and you can see the remains of a Roman port there that's, I guess, partially submerged, and there's also a Roman villa there on the island, which you can climb around on a little bit. So it's kind of cool. I mean, it's not in a museum type of setting. It's just out there in the open. You can go there for your own exploration.
And does it still have ferry service even though it's uninhabited?
So in this particular island of Basiluzzo, there is no ferry service. You would have to reach there by private boat, and there are plenty of those. They're actually quite cheap to find somebody that'll take you around for a day, and you can do that. So now the island that you want to see if you really want to take in the volcano is called Stromboli, and this is one of three active volcanoes in Italy. The other two being Etna, which is on the main island of Sicily, and the other being Vesuvius, which is near Naples. So the last major eruption of Stromboli was in 2009, but they have daily eruptions. And in fact,
Oh, wow.
yeah, I mean, you can take the boat there. They like to take you at sunset because as the sun's setting, you can actually see the red and orange lava spitting out. And it's pretty cool. I mean, it's really, and it's not dangerous. You can actually hike to it as well if you have the right equipment, boots and clothes and probably a guide. I think they charge you about $30 for a guided tour, and it takes a couple of hours. And most want to go at sunset. They want to reach the summit at sunset so that they can take great pictures of the sky darkening while
Sure.
the lava is flowing. So it is mostly an explosive type of an eruption. It's not really the flowing lava so much, but more like the spurting lava. And you can see it, and you can get pretty close. Actually, I mean, I did it by boat. I didn't hike that volcano myself, but I did go there on a boat trip, and we just kind of bobbed off the island there right at sunset. And sure enough, right on cue, the darn thing went off and got a couple of pictures.
Well, in my understanding, I was reading that J.R.R. Tolkien identified his fictional volcano Mount Doom in Mordor with the volcano of Stromboli.
Yeah, I heard that as well. I think they probably mentioned that on the trip. They tried.
I'll bet they did.
Yeah, it's also used in the novel Journey to the Center of the Earth by Jules Verne.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that's the end of the novel, the end of the story, I guess, maybe where they exit, back
Okay.
onto the top of the earth again. So, yeah, there's some folklore there.
And also something you can order in an Italian restaurant, a Stromboli.
Yeah, right.
I assume named after the volcano, but I honestly don't know that.
Yeah, aimed after the volcano or just aimed after probably somebody from that island who made this dish that, decided to name it after his hometown.
So, and you say hometown, it's got an active volcano, but it is an inhabited island, from what you're saying.
It is an inhabited island, believe it or not. Yes, yes. I mean, on certain sides of the island, they have little villages there. Not many. I'm trying to think. I think there's, I want to say about 500 inhabitants on that island, maybe less than that, 400. But yes, it is inhabited, believe it or not. I guess they know. They know when the volcano is going to erupt that they head for high ground, or I guess just take off on a boat and go to a safer spot.
Yeah, I think high ground would be a bad choice of words there.
Yeah.
That would be up towards the volcano. I don't think we want to do that.
No. That's right. That's right. Jump on a boat and get the heck out of there. But yeah, they do. They live there. And so it's an interesting relationship that these people have with the land, with the volcano, with the sea. I mean, the winds can be brutal there certain times of the year. In the winter especially, the sea gets rough, the volcano erupts, there's even earthquakes, you name it. And, they live with it. And so that's just their world.
Well, and it looks quite striking. I mean, it's not a big island, yet the volcano is what I was reading over 8,800 feet or 2,700 meters. I mean, it looks like a volcano.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I only saw it from the sea, but it was pretty impressive. I mean, it makes you feel kind of small. Like I said, they just sort of live there, and I want to say in harmony with the elements, but they're certainly respectful of all these different, natural perils that are surrounding them every day. But they live their lives, and it's a fishing community, it's an agricultural community. Obsidian was once a big exporter there, so the volcanic glass, I guess, that's used
Sure.
for jewelry, or what else would they use it for? I'm not really sure. That's an export as well. So wine, fish, these volcanic products, I guess, and then they do nowadays. Of course, they've done a clever job of marketing the volcanic mud for beauty reasons and
Sure.
all that kind of stuff. So these are the other two islands. There's Filicudi and Alicudi, and these are the ones that are really just small. I mean, to the point where Alicudi has like 80 year-round residents on it, and they don't really have a tourist business. I suppose there are some houses and stuff you could stay there, but these are really small communities. Probably been there for generations and generations, and don't really have a lot of contact with the outside world. And the ferries that go there are infrequent, and I really don't see tourists going there very much at all.
Okay. So you're recommending really for a week base in Lipari and then visit kind of the islands to the east, the eastern half of the islands.
Yes, the eastern half, and then Volcano is just south of you there. So Salina is worth a visit as well. But I think this is the way you do the trip. You base yourself there in one place, and then you take day trips to the other islands. And again, this is for people who want to do some hiking. They want to explore some archaeological ruins. They want to do some, water sports. Now, whether that just be swimming in the ocean, in the sea rather, or, they do have scuba diving. There's some wreck diving there, from what I understand. I didn't do it, but I did do snorkeling there. And the snorkeling was beautiful. The water is crystal clear blue. You can certainly do swimming, snorkeling, scuba diving, boating. They can take you out fishing if you're interested in that.
And you mentioned archaeological sites, but I don't feel like we got into any detail on those.
Yeah, well, on the main island of Lipari, there was the Greek Acropolis.
The Agora, you mentioned.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. The Agora, I'm sorry. And that you can see there. It's just ruins, obviously. It's just the remains of it. There is the Roman villa on the smaller island of Basaluzzo. So there's a little ruins of a Roman villa there, and as well as the Roman port. Now, I haven't seen that. I haven't been out there to that, but they say that actually submerged or right at sea level, slightly underwater, is this Roman port. And in a sense, I guess what you see are probably just obviously rocks,
Steps and columns and things.
steps and columns and things like that. Right, exactly.
Interesting.
So this is a great area. Now the seafood, of course, is their main diet. The little sardines, they make these in different ways. The little fried sardines, they call it frito misto. They'll mix up sardines with calamari and shrimp and make a nice little fried dish for you. That's usually taken as a light lunch, believe it or not. It's not super heavy. Lots of different pasta dishes, of course, always incorporating shellfish, often mussels and clams and that sort of thing. The white wine, like I said, there's the Malvasia, which is a dessert wine, but they have various types of native white wines. Inzolia is one you see a lot. That's not actually native to Lipari or to the Aeolian Islands. It's more the western part of Sicily, but that's kind of the typical white wine that you would drink there.
What surprised you about the area?
What surprised me? Well, it did surprise me the second time going, and I don't remember the first time, but it surprised me how hard it was to get there. And I think that is really part of the charm. For me, it is, because not many people make the effort, at least not many foreigners do. You do see some Italian tourists there, but you really don't see many foreigners at all. The people there are quite nice. They're welcoming to tourists. You're not going to find a lot of English spoken, although if you go on Lipari, some of the main hotels, the hotel staff will certainly speak English, but, going into the little shops and markets and things like that, you may have to resort to hand gestures, which work quite well.
As long as you know your inappropriate Italian hand gestures.
Yeah, be careful because you want to avoid those. You might make some enemies while you're there. No, but they're really friendly, and they welcome guests for the most part. At least on Lipari and Panarea and Volcano and Salina. So if you go to those smaller islands, they're a little more standoffish. But the big islands, they want people to come, and they're always interested, especially if you're from a foreign country. They want to know, how did you come all the way here? It is pretty amazing. For them, I mean, they live the entire lives on these islands, and they can't imagine how far away New York City must be, for example. And they've seen pictures of it. Someone from New York might as well be from Mars. And they like talking to you and getting to know you a little bit, finding out about your life and everything and what brought you to their part of the world.
Any particular local that you have fond memories of?
A local person, yes. There was this one guy. I don't know how we got to this location. It was a kind of an industrial area. I mean, believe it or not, we were taking this bus around the island. We stopped. We saw a little coffee cart, and we stopped there. And I do speak Italian, but these people speak a pretty strong, dialect that can even be considered a separate language. And so, I was trying my best to talk to him, but, it was just one of those people that had lived there his entire life, maybe have been to a couple of the other islands around there and had never really, ventured off the island. But he was very proud of himself because I guess a documentary filmmaker had come through there a few years ago and featured him in a film. So he was the movie star of the island, and he was pretty proud of his status. So
Excellent.
everybody knows him as the movie star. So that was the one guy that I talked to, I guess, the longest. And he had this little coffee stand, and I think he was a fisherman actually. His wife ran the coffee stand, but he would come there after he was done in the day and just hang out, and people just sit there for hours and drink coffee and chit chat. And that's very you really get into that pace of life there, where people slow down and just talk to each other, and no one's looking at their watch or checking their email or anything. They're just sort of enjoying their surroundings, and it's a very relaxing atmosphere.
Excellent. You mentioned hiking a couple times. Do you have a particularly enjoyable hiking trail that you did?
Gosh, yeah, it was on Lipari actually,
Okay.
and it was on the back. So Lipari, the main city, it's also the island. It's also the name of the port city. It's called Lipari as well, which is where I stayed, and that's where most of the accommodations are. But on the back side of the island, they have some fantastic hiking trails, and they go all the way up to the peak of the island.
And you say the peak of the island, all of these islands are volcanic, and so this one has an extinct volcano while the other ones have active ones.
Probably so. I'm sure it does. So I'm up on the north edge of the island. So, the port is sort of on the southeast part. Now we're up on the north edge of the island, standing on, it feels like you're standing on the edge of the earth, really, and you're just looking out at this expanse of sea. But you can see these other little islands, including the Stromboli, where there is the active volcano. Now I was there during the peak of the day, so it was quite bright, and I couldn't see anything but maybe a little smoke coming off of Stromboli. But it's just really beautiful up there. You can see forever and very clear, and the ocean is crystal blue.
And let me interrupt you for just a second. I was wrong. The volcanoes on Lipari are actually still considered active.
Oh, really? Oh, you found that online? Oh, great. No, I mean, I'm sure they all are. I don't know what the difference is between active and dormant.
Dormant is no activity.
No
And
activity.
in this case, they have steaming fumaroles and hydrothermal activity, so that's why they consider them active, apparently.
Well, that makes sense because, as I said, I mean, sometimes you do see these bubbles coming out of the ocean, and it's obviously warm water or warm
Right,
something
right.
coming up from the center of the earth. The one thing I was going to go back to, and I guess it's sort of easy to romanticize this sort of stuff a little bit. This was the area that was documented by Homer's Odyssey, and this you get this sense there that this sort of mythology. Well, everybody recognizes it as mythology. It's sort of still alive there, and they kind of play with it a little bit. I mean, or at least they're playing with me. Being the tourist, incorporating it into the folklore of the island itself, and mixing it in with superstition and religion, and it all just becomes this mix of these supernatural beliefs that again, I'm not sure how much I would call them beliefs, as they are just part of their history and part of their stories. So it really adds a layer of things.
Okay, that was a little vague, so can you give us an example?
Yeah. Okay. Well, for example, in Sicily, they have this religious sect. I'm sure it's not active anymore, but this was, probably as recent as, I don't know, 100 years ago, where there were Catholic women who prayed not to Mother Mary, but to Demeter, who the Roman gods called Charis. And so it's almost like what we call Santeria, maybe in the Caribbean, that where they combine mythology or paganism with Catholicism and they don't really see.
Uh-huh.
And then you throw in a little superstition there too, just randomly, and they've got their own brand of religion, if you want to call it that, or whatever, their beliefs. So these things that we would consider mythology and stories from ancient history actually sort of are woven into the fabric of life, in a way. Again, I don't know how many people, quote unquote, believe it, or how much of it is just sort of like, we have Santa Claus and, we like to talk about him and he's part of our culture. But obviously, once you're about 7 years old, 8 years old, that's the end of Santa Claus. I think in past years, it was much more a real part of their belief system. And now it's more part of their history. But, it is interesting because you do feel it, and they are sort of proud of it. And they kind of go out of their way to let you know how important they are, that they were, part of the birth of Western civilization. Yeah. I mean, it is interesting.
Excellent. As we go to wind this down, anything else we should know before I get to my last 4 questions, before we head off to the long trip to get to the Aeolian Islands?
I think this would be a trip that I would probably plan in conjunction. If you were going to do a longer trip to, well, to Europe or to Italy, I would, if you wanted to do a week to see, Rome, maybe Naples, and then a week in the islands. I might plan it that way, just because number one, you could sort of ease yourself into the culture and everything a little bit. It'd be pretty shocking, I think, to just show up at Lipari, and, but I mean, after 20 hours on the plane or whatever, you'd half jet lag. But I might suggest that, and just come with an open mind and a hungry appetite, and you'll have a lot of fun.
Excellent. I should say that one odd fact that I stumbled across is that there is a fine if you wear only your bikini thongs or swimming costumes in the town center. So you don't want to do that. Want to bring your cover up, or there's a €500 fine.
That's good to know. That's excellent information, because they do dress a little scantily on the beach.
And that's pretty typical European, too, is that they wear a lot less on the beach, but you're not expected to wear that into town. We're somewhere in between there.
That's for sure. Yeah, I know, in Florida, where I'm from, I've seen people in the grocery store in their bikinis and flip-flops, and,
You're standing in the prettiest spot that you visited in the Aeolian Islands. Where are you standing? What are you looking at?
Yeah, I think the one I described a minute ago. I'm on top of Lipari, looking sort of north. Mm-hmm. Right below me is just a brown cliff that just sort of all of a sudden becomes this crystal blue sea. And then off in the distance is a black volcano with smoke rising out of it. That's it.
Excellent. One thing that makes you laugh and say only in the Aeolian.
That's funny. I don't know if I could say only the Aeolians. I could say, we could break it down to say Sicily or Italy, but I mean, no, probably the Aeolians. We could say, just don't expect any kind of timetable to be honored.
Sure. I think it's a little bigger than the Aeolians, but yes.
Yeah. If the boat shows up an hour and a half late, don't look for an apology or an explanation. Just go with it, because, they're on their island time. And if it's the same day, they figure they're on time. So, that's it. It does make me laugh, but it can be some frustrating when you have a plane to catch.
Finish this thought. You really know you're in the Aeolians
when you're sitting at a beautiful outdoor restaurant, having some fresh fish and sipping a little Malvasia wine and looking out at the ocean, and either there's some boaters out there or the volcano, but you feel that salty sea breeze come in, and there's the Italian being chit-chat in the background, and you can close your eyes and you would know you were there. You wouldn't even have to really open your eyes.
Excellent. And if you had to summarize your whole experience in the Aeolian Islands in just 3 words, what would you use?
I would have to say welcoming,
okay,
delicious,
okay,
and panoramic.
Excellent. Our guest again has been Rick Zullo. Rick, where can people read more about your travels?
Well, I have my personal blog at rickzullo.com, and it's a travel blog, but it just deals with travel within the country of Italy. So from Milan all the way to Sicily, I cover it all.
Excellent. And do you want to point out to us a recent article about the Aeolian Islands that you're going to publish between now and when this airs?
So, yeah, I have an upcoming article about a recent trip to the Aeolian Islands that I took with some other bloggers. And we had quite the odyssey, to stick with the theme here of today's episode. And I chronicle a little bit of that in the blog post, our challenges in arriving in Lipari, and how happy I was when I finally got to my hotel.
Excellent. Rick, thanks so much for coming on The Amateur Traveler and sharing with us your love for Italy and then specifically for the Aeolian Islands.
Chris, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
In news of the community, last time I checked, we only had 4 open spots for the trip to Cambodia in April of 2016. One thing, if you want to know about those things sooner, you might want to get on the Amateur Traveler mailing list, and that's probably how you're going to find out about these things quickest, or join the Facebook community. We also put things out on the Facebook page, or in case of specifically trips, join the Amateur Traveler private trip group, which is amateurtraveler.com/trip. We had a comment from Paige recently on the episode we did on El Salvador that said, "This podcast made me happy. I love El Salvador so much. It's one of my favorite places in the world for many of the same reasons that Joe brought up. Gorgeous beaches, fantastic national parks, Suchitoto and Los Almendros. Love that hotel. And the fact that Salvadorians aren't annoyed with too many tourists and don't mind showing off their amazing country to travelers willing to take the trip. I'd like to add that Yaoyue and the Ruta Las Flores is a great destination for less adventurous tourists with solid tourist infrastructure, trails, waterfalls, handicrafts, and easy transport connections to Guatemala City. If you speak a little Spanish, other spots to see include the massive Coatepeque Crater Lake with some lovely little hotels and restaurants right on the water. Perquin, the old revolutionary capital, is now a semi-developed base for ecotourism. Bahia de Iquiquelesco, if you want to support El Salvadorians' nascent sea turtle population programs, and La Palma, the handicraft center founded by Fernando Yort, plus a side trip into the cool cloud forests of El Mirador del Mundo. Joe was right. Everyone who spends time there wants to become an informal ambassador of El Salvador. Please note that the State Department warning says that 34 U.S. citizens have been killed in El Salvador since 2014, ignores the fact that their infamous organized crime organizations, gangs, maras, whatever you want to call them, are transnational, and most, if not all of those deaths involve U.S. citizens who are involved with gangs. Yeah, I didn't get into that because honestly I don't know. I didn't really want to say that on the show, although it's certainly something that I suppose, and I think the State Department didn't say it also because I'm not sure it's something that they know definitively, but it's certainly a question you have to raise. And thanks, Paige, for your comment, and with that, I think we'll end this episode of The Amateur Traveler. If you have questions, leave a comment on this episode, as Paige did, or send me an email to host@amateurtraveler.com. You can also follow me on Pinterest, Instagram, or Twitter as Chris2X, and as always, thanks so much for listening.